Alright, welcome back to this next tutorial series. We're going to deal with painting textures onto our terrain. I'm going to show you two ways. One is painting them onto it with the different layers, and the other thing I'm going to show you is the removing of actual sections of terrain via a visibility toggle that will allow you to show or hide certain aspects of it. Like if you wanted to take this section of the terrain right here against this wall, you wanted to hide that, you could, or the top of this mountain here and you hide it, you could, or whatever you wanted to hide through the invisibility node, you'd be able to. So let's go ahead and get started here. First thing I've done is I've created a landscape folder. I've put assets, material, and textures, and you'll understand why I have the assets folder in there here in a minute when we get to it. But go ahead and make you those folders if you need to real quick. Okay, now with that being made, we are going to go ahead and real quick we're going to take and get us some textures. Now, I made some imports here already of just a simple grass, a little grass and rocky here. And then I also have a little mountain thing. It's just a little rock and fixture, nothing major. And I also have their normals here. See, I have their normals. Now, whenever you're wanting to do stuff like this or anything with the Unreal Engine dealing with materials and textures and stuff, you always want to make sure they're seamless. That way you don't see the breaks in the material blocks like you can see here, because I haven't rebuilt my lighting. You can see the actual terrain component blocks that we covered in the last video. You can actually see them. Now, if that block is one single texture panel, if this is not seamless, you will see these lines between each material panel. And you don't want to do that. You want it all to flow nice. You want it to be even and all. So how do you tell if a material is seamless? Well, you could go to Google or Yahoo Images and type in seamless materials, and you could hunt through them for days and see if you find anything. Most of the time you'll get lucky and you'll find them. But how do you know for sure? Well, if you use Photoshop, because that's the program I use, so that's the only one I really know, and you want to find out if a material is actually seamless or not, you would actually pull it up in here, and let me see if I can find one of my, here we go. Here's a fire texture I have. Alright, and I'm going to pull up a non-seamless one real quick just to show you all that. Let's show this one here. Okay, so we have this texture and we have this texture. Alright, now the first thing we want to do, like I said before, we want to make sure that this, if we put it side by side by side by side, it'll just go straight through. You'll never see the edges of each terrain or of each tile. So first thing you need to know is you need to know the image's size. In our case, we're a 1024 by 1024. So you go to Filter, Other, Offset. Type in 512 for the horizontal. Let me drag this over here. So the horizontal at 512 and the vertical at 512. And you'll see the image shift, but there's no cross in here. And you'll understand the cross here in a minute when I show you the other one. Everything still flows no matter how you turn this image. I can shift it this way some. I can shift it that way some. The image still stays the same. Well, not the same, but it's still seamless. No matter how you turn or twist or break this thing down, it's still going to be seamless. Alright? But if we do that to a image that's not, this is 16 by 16. So you go to, you go to Filter, Other, and Offset again. It was 16 by 16, so, well, it's 800 by 800, but you should already see the thing. You see this line right here, okay? In fact, we'll do this, hit OK, and you can see right here and right here, you can actually see where the terrain is different. And if we zoom in here, you'll be able to see it better. But you can see it. You don't see it much, but you do see it. Like you can see it, this little grass panel here doesn't continue over to the next tile. So when you put this side by side, you would actually see this box style, this cross. That's what you would see in your game. And you don't want that. You want the textures to be actually seamless so that you always, it just flows. You never want to see those borders. Okay? So both of these tiles here are I've already tested they're seamless. Alright. Now the other thing, I'll open my Photoshop here back up a sec. We don't even need that open no more, so I'm just going to close it. No, I don't want to save it. To make normal maps, I just use a plugin. I downloaded NVIDIA plugin for Photoshop, and I can make I can make normals with that. And there's videos out there that cover all of this, so I'm not going to get into all of this, but if you're using Photoshop and you're trying to make normals, this is a good way to do it. You can just hit OK, and you can see in this, you can see the parts where it's risen up, you can see the parts where it drops down, and that will give you the normal. And like I said, there's videos that go more into depth about that there. So now that we have our texture selected, okay, we need to go ahead and make our material. So let's go to material. We're going to make a new material. Okay, so we're going to right click on it. We're going to materials. We're going to call this landscape_map. Okay, now we can double click and open that up. Drag this up. I'm using it like this because I want to be able to see my textures as well as my material window. So now, once you're in this, the way we need to paint stuff, or when we make our landscape material, it's the same as when we make our actual material for the terrain. So we're going to make the base material first, and then we're going to make a separate material that will actually handle all of the visibility inputs. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is, now that we have that made, we need to go in here and we need to scroll on down through the side menu here, and under usage we need to, and you can drag this out if you can't see it, but you want to used with landscape. Okay, and you want to just check that. That'll set it up to where the system will know that we need to use it with the landscape. Okay, the first thing that you need to do is we need a landscape layer chords, and it will look just like this, the nice little green and yellow and red and oranges and all them nice little colors. Alright, once you have that out, okay, you want to set up a couple of things. The first thing we need to do is we need to drag in all of our textures. Alright, so we just shift select all of those, drag them on in here, separate them up. Alright, now whatever order you put these in up here, make sure you put these down here in the same order. So let's drag that over, drag that back. So that's the result, that's the grass texture, and this means that's our mountain texture. Alright, so now we have both of those set up. Now the other thing you can do, and there's a document up on the documents site for the Unreal Engine. I'll have a link to that in this video that'll cover both this and the other one if there's any other questions or something is not working properly and you can't get a hold of me for questions. So I'll have a link to that in here. Now we're going to make it constant. This is going to handle our metallic. We do not want it to have any kind of metallic reflection at all. So we're just going to make us a constant. And again, I right clicked on it. I typed in constant in the search bar. It pulled up constant, and then that's what I selected. Just select that, and it makes it. Now you can leave the value at 0, but if you wanted to change the value, like you wanted the landscape to have a little bit of a metallic feel, like say you were on your landscape represents the machine world or something and you want it to be a little reflective, you could reset this from 0 to anything else by just clicking right here in this box and changing it to whatever you wanted, 50, 70, a million, as high as it can go for what you need it. It's not 1 but 0. But for our particular case, we're just going to have it at 0. Okay. The other thing we need to do is we need to make a scalar parameter. Sorry. When you just type in scalar, you'll get scalar parameter. So go ahead and open that. This is going to be linked to our roughness node on our thing. You can see over here we have metallic, roughness, emissive, normal. Have all these different hookups that we can use. So we have roughness and metallic, which are what these two here are going to be plugged into. Now, we can set a value for this, which in our case is going to be 0.5. But you can set it to whatever you want. Just play around with it, get the feeling that you want for it, see what's going to be what. Okay. And then now we want to connect up all of the UVs to this landscape chords node. And now we have all of that hooked up. So now what we're going to get into and we're going to see here is we're going to blend these together. Okay, the grass texture and the mountain texture are actually going to be blended together so that we can paint one over the other. All right. So now the way we set that up is we come over here a little, and in our search bar over here we can type in landscape. Okay. You want a landscape layer blend. So just highlight that and drag it out onto the material editor graph. Now, we got to do a few things here because we need to set it up to show stuff. We need to be able to paint and everything over it. So we need to make 2 elements because we only have 2 textures that we're going to use. The first one we're just going to call grass, and that is going to be a weight blend. Now, the reason it's going to be a weight blend is it's actually going to be on the top. So when we first put this on the terrain and we get everything set up before we do any kind of painting, this texture is the texture we're going to see. Okay? So we want that at weight blend. Put a preview of 1. That means that we will see that above all of the others. None of the others are going to show. We're just going to see that one. Okay? And then we're going to name this one mountain because it's what I actually have for my mountain textures. And we want this one to be a height blend because we're actually going to give that some height. Now, if you want to give your grass some height or whatever your top layer is, you can just change it from a weight blend to a height blend, and it will still work. Okay. So once you have all those set up, okay, you need to do the same thing for the ones here at the bottom for your normal maps. Right. So you just Control-C and copy-paste that. Right. Now, you want to go ahead and hook all of this fun stuff up. So that. Now, all of my height information, my black and white scale, is stored in my normal map. If yours happens to be stored in your texture file, like if you're importing a PNG with an alpha channel that's black and white that shows the height, you would just drag off of the alpha channel of that node and you would hook it to the height. But in our case, I use my normal for that. So connect everything up here. Okay. And then we can, another fast way, like if you have just these direct nodes, you can right click on the node and just select where you want it to connect to. Connect to that, connect to roughness. And then this one here goes to base color. And this one to normal. Alright. And you can see over here in the corner, if we disconnect this real quick, just disconnect that, you see we have just the basic grass and rock there. It's flat, it's smooth, there's nothing to it. But if we connect this to our normal up, you see that now we have some ridges in there, we have some nice little spots in there where they're a little bumpy and you can see the different, it looks more like a terrain texture. more like rock and grass and stuff on the ground. Okay. And that's all you have to do for this. Alright, so I'm going to back out here a little, and in fact I'll go ahead and just drag this on my hotbar layer. And I'll let you look at that a minute and get what you need to get from it. There. Right. Be easier for you to see. Alright, so now that you've got all that, we can actually go ahead and save that. Alright, we can exit out of that. And now we need to apply that material to our texture. So the first thing we need to do is we need to select our terrain. We want to select our texture in the content browser. Make sure we still have the yellow border around our terrain. Select Details window. Now mine is all kept right here together. I just personally like it that way. If you haven't changed any of your stuff, your detail window will actually be in this bottom corner. If it's 4.7, if it's 4.6, it'll be in this top corner over here. And we're just going to hit this little arrow right here next to landscape material, and that's going to become our new landscape material. It'll compile the shaders, and if you've done it right, you should see the grass material on the top there. Alright, so see, there is our grass material. And you can see there's a little bit of shine to it, though there actually should not be. But once you rebuild the level, that should actually go away. But when I was talking about the seamless stuff, you can see in there, you can't see the lines of the textures. You know, it's all smooth, it's all fluent, everything looks good to go and all there. If that texture is too small for you and you want to boost it up, all you have to do is go back into your landscape material, and here under the landscape chords and under your details panel, you would just play with this mapping scale right here. In which case, I'm going to go 0.021, which I think I went reverse on that, and I wasn't supposed to. Hit save so it updates the material. You could also just hit apply. It won't save the material, but it will apply the changes to whatever it has on it. And then you can see here, now we're looking a lot more brown because it's a lot smaller. So we have gone in the wrong direction. So let's go with 15. You can see the change here. Okay. Now, yes, you see this line here on the material editor, but that's okay. You can even change it to pane there, to plain. All right, we can hit apply. We look over here. It's going to compile our shaders real quick. Now note, the bigger your terrain or the more you have on your terrain, the longer it's going to take to compile because of the shaders and the more on it. But this looks actually pretty good. This is a nice fluent terrain look. It's looking fairly well. Nothing too big, nothing too bad there. Alright. But now we need to be able to paint it because, you know, we want to turn some, like this little edge right here, we want to make it rocky. We want to make the edge of this mountain a little rocky and some of the edges back here rocky, or maybe even some of the ground a little rocky. So what we do is we go over to our modes. We open up our terrain. Now, unless you've made a new terrain through the Manage tool here, you're going to only have one terrain. You just select Paint. Now, we see our material on there, so we know that's working. You should see this. It should see a grass and a mountain. Alright? So you hit this little plus arrow here. Okay? Now, when you hit that, you're going to get two different things that pop up. And what you're going to see there is this weight blended layer and non-weight blended layer. Okay? You want to select weight blended. It'll ask you, where do you want to save this? These are the things you put in the assets folder. Okay? You can call them assets, resources, which is what the documentation calls it, or you name it whatever you want. You can put these wherever you want. But for me, I like keeping all of my landscape stuff relatively together. So I'm just going to make that, and you can see we kick back to the content browser in our assets folder, and there's our grass layer info. And we do the same thing for the mountain. Blended normal, choose landscape, assets, okay, and now there's both of those. So I'm going to go ahead and save real quick while you go ahead and catch up and make those if you need to, save if you need to, whatever the case may be. Okay, and we're going to actually stop this one here because we're getting a little lengthy on this video, I believe. And in the next video, we're actually going to paint and create the next material, the other material, or the other version of this material, which will allow us to also cut holes through the material that we can actually fall through, because it will be invisible and it will not have a collision on it like this regular terrain has. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video.